Good evening, everyone, and welcome to After the Roll, The Legend of Vox Machina, Season 2, Episode 3, The Sunken Tomb. This is the show where we break down each episode of Vox Machina, the writing, the storytelling, and all of the elements in between, and we also have featured cocktails for each episode. And I'm being joined by my co-host, who will now introduce themselves.
Hey, my name is Billy Sporkle McSpork. It's great to be here, Travis. I love every episode and every season that we get to work together. I think tonight's going to be another good one. What do you think?
I'm super excited for it. I think it's going to be fantastic. And same thing, we have After the Roll, we have After the Weave, we have After the Night. So many shows that we do together and we work on, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I am your other co-host, the Calm Scribe, also known as Travis. And we are going to jump into The Legend of Vox Machina, Episode 3 in just a moment. But we do have a new cocktail.
We do.
We do, and I'm excited for this cocktail. So before I show how to make it, I'm going to give everyone a brief rundown of what it is. So without getting too much detail into what is happening in this episode, but you'll see, this cocktail says, I'm just going to bring it over here. Hey, greetings, Green Giant. How are you? The Sunken Heart. Taking inspiration from The Sunken Tomb and the end of this episode, The Sunken Heart is a layered cocktail. The layers and complexity of this cocktail tease not only the eyes, but also the palate. The dark cherry at the bottom is a surprise that represents love and loss as it waits to be found in the dark depths of the drink. Maraschino liqueur and amaretto add a subtle sweet and nutty note to the cocktail, adding complexity to the dark, coffee-infused rum, which calls to wake up even the deepest sleeping being. Topped with club soda, the drink visually gives the impression of a layer of water, which deepens the mystery, and with a layer of ice on top. Finally, the cardamom bitters tile the flavors together and accents the coffee rum. Each sip offers a refreshing sensation with multiple layers to tease the taste buds. Layers of flavor to tease the taste buds. So this is what the cocktail looks like. So as you can see, we have the layer of ice on top, we have the clear layer of water, and then we have the dark, mysterious depths down below. When serving this, I do recommend stirring it up just to get all the flavors amalgamated, but this is the way you would serve it to your guest if you're having people to watch episode 3 of Vox Machina. So let's take a look at how to make this drink. It's time for another Legend of Vox Machina inspired literary cocktail. This time we're taking inspiration from Season 2, Episode 3, The Sunken Tomb, and we're going to be making The Sunken Heart. I took aspects of the show and used them to influence the creation of this cocktail. So what we need for this cocktail is going to be 1.5 ounces of coffee-infused rum, there we go. Then we're going to use 1/2 ounce of maraschino liqueur. Just like that. 1/2 ounce of Disaronno amaretto. And 5 dashes of cardamom bitters. Or to taste. This is the Sunken Heart, so we are going to also add a Amarena cherry. It's a nice dark cherry here. We're going to add that to the bottom because that makes up our Sunken Heart. Next, we are going to add our ice to the glass. There we are. We have 5 ice cubes added in here. And then this whole thing, we're going to give a quick little stir, ensuring that we amalgamate the flavors, but we keep the cherry on the bottom because the cherry is the Sunken Heart. And then we take a can of club soda and pour it down the bar spoon just to top off the drink and create a nice layered effect. We're not going to stir this anymore. It's up to the person with the beverage as to whether or not they want to stir their cocktail. Although when you're drinking it, I do recommend stirring it. We're doing this slow to create a layered effect because this is the Sunken Heart. And in the episode The Sunken Tomb, they have to go beneath water that is covered in ice to get to the tomb to try to get what they're searching for. So when we do this drink like this, we have a nice layered effect of ice and then water and then the mysterious dark depths with the heart sunken down below. Cheers. Fantastic cocktail for episode 3 of season 2 of Legend of Vox Machina, The Sunken Tomb. I feature and give to you the Sunken Heart. Have a great day, and let me know what you think of all of these cocktails that we're designing, and if there's any cocktails you would like to see designed. Cheers, and enjoy responsibly. Take care. And there we go. That is how you make the cocktail, the Sunken Heart. And as you can see, it actually isn't that difficult to replicate. We made it on stream, or on the TikTok, and again, you can see this one looks almost identical. I made this just before we came on. So what are your thoughts on tonight's cocktail?
Honestly, this is the cocktail for me. I love amaretto. I love rum. I think that it looks really cool and is a great effect for the episode that we're about to discuss. I think you hit the nail right on the head with this one.
Thanks. And I'm hoping to get closer and closer as we go along each time. And yes, Green Giant, you do definitely need to watch this show. So, with all of that being said, I'm going to give my cocktail a really quick stir, and let's jump into things. There we go. So, what are your overall thoughts of this episode before we jump in?
So I'm sure I'm going to echo this again at the end of our wrap-up, but this is probably my favorite episode so far in both seasons of Vox Machina. There's a lot going on in it that I really, really liked.
I'd agree with that. There is a lot going on. It covers a lot of groundwork. And one thing I realized while watching this episode is the writing is a lot more intricate this season. Hey, SJ, how are you tonight? It's a lot more intricate writing. There's a lot more subtle weaving of storylines, subtle foreshadowing, and connecting the dots. And I think, given the fact that we've been breaking down every episode so far, it really gives us a kind of an advantage in being able to look at what style they use in their writing and how they present their foreshadowing. And so the fact that they made it even more subtle than they normally do, we're still able to pick up on it. Although I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if there's a bunch of stuff that we miss.
Oh, I guarantee that there's a bunch of stuff that we missed. I don't know about you, Travis, but I've definitely perused YouTube on occasion to see some of the videos where people talk about like the hidden Easter eggs and the things that are kind of hidden in these episodes. And so far, the only one that I've watched was on episode 1 this season, and it was so much. I am so embarrassed as a person to have missed so much in episode 1. Yes.
Oh, so we're gonna have to up our game then, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the tabletop game, and it's been 4 years since I saw a Critical Role tabletop game of season 1, so I don't feel that bad about it. I already made the disclaimer that I don't remember much about the story arc, but still.
And I'm off the hook because I didn't have the opportunity to watch.
Yeah.
So, but there are still some things, and that's the thing is you can also, even having not seen it, there's things you can pick up from that have come from that. But
absolutely.
So this one has a very hot cold opening where we see Pike with Thordak or a group of people that are walking towards Thordak, and I paused to start taking my notes, and I just happened to pause on this lovely scene of a gentleman laying face down, or kind of face down, on the ground with a shard of ice going through the back of his head and out of his eyeball, and blood everywhere. It was just this like beautiful scene of just reminding you just how vicious this is for a man under the reign of the Chroma Conclave.
That's quite the pause, Travis.
Yeah, it's purely coincidental, but it was just this like ice coming through the eye. I was like, oh, that's a lovely gentleman.
I can't say any of my pauses were that epic, but yeah, there was a lot going on in the cold open in this episode. we're basically taking a peek at what life is like back in the cities that the Chroma Conclave have been taking over, demanding tribute from, and all is not great. All is not great.
Yeah, definitely all is not great. And we see that the Chroma Conclave can't really be trusted for their word. And this is another instance, I think it's the second instance this season, where we actually see all four dragons. And I think this is the clearest instance where we see all four dragons sitting together, holding counsel with the three of them with Thordak, who's going through things. And we learn that the Amon has been dried up, and they've taken everything they can from there. And the Western is on the brink of collapse and brink of disaster. And this is where we see Thordak, surprise of all surprises, break his promise where he says, if you don't try to run, you don't try to flee, you'll survive. And now that he's learned he's taken everything that he can from the coffers, he looks at the people and says, well, you and your baubles are useless now, and blast them with fire.
Yeah, surprise among surprises, right? Who would have thought that this clearly evil dragon would go back on their word? But hey, things got really hot for all the townspeople in Naman.
Yeah, and for Pike, we see Pike running away and getting blasted by this fireball coming from Thordak, which kind of leaves a bit of a pit in your heart as we get into, and a bit of confusion as we get into the title sequence going through.
That's what I was going to say. A bit of confusion as, the last time that we saw Pike, she is, I'm not going to say comfortably with the group, as they did just, survive a fall from a great height twice. But yeah,
and the Slayer's take,
and the Slayer's take, correct.
And the Sphinx. There's a lot they went through. This group has been put through a lot, and that was the thing where I found that whole thing with Pike was a bit of subtle foreshadowing for this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have that, but then we do have that cutscene. We have the title sequence, and then it comes back, and Pike is live and well. She has just had a vision granted to her by the Everlight, and she tells the rest of the group that the dragons are spreading across Tal'Dorei, and it's getting worse. Thordak is wiping out the humans, and everything is going from bad to worse than ever.
Yeah, so during the title sequence, I actually sat down and took notes on what I thought the cold open could be. I was considering this might be one of her astral projection things. Obviously, it wasn't that.
That's what I wrote down too, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I thought maybe it was a premonition, so I thought maybe it hadn't happened yet. It was something to happen. Nope. Turns out this is actually happening, and the dragons are really bad news.
Yeah, so it almost was a form of astral projection without astral projection. That's one of the thing that kind of confused me with this is she said it was a vision, but she was there walking among the people, yelling at them to run, interacting with them, or at least attempting to. We don't see the people react back to her, but then again, she talks to them for the first time as they're being blasted by a dragon, so they may not have stopped to shake her hand.
Yeah, they may have been running because there was a dragon trying to blast them. The thing that stuck out to me is that she specifically says that she couldn't help them, which leads me to believe that she physically was there, because otherwise, how was she going to help them in a dream or in a premonition or in a vision? She had to have been astral projecting to be able to help them, like she did in Whitestone during the big epic war against the zombies.
Exactly. And it's funny that we both came to the same conclusion on that it was an astral projection that went through. And there did seem to be kind of coming back when she woke up from the vision. Mm-hmm. It did seem astral projection, vision, whatever it is. She saw a whole bunch of nasty stuff happening. And then we have this really poignant scene where... and I love the fact that we have so many nicknames in this episode, where Kiki is in this episode is just saying that, Iman felt like home. So I know we're scattered from everywhere. We're all kind of lumped together, but Iman felt like home. And that's where we have Percy saying, yes, they gave us titles, and Vex saying, we're going to do something about those titles. Because earlier in the season, we have them say, well, I know we're keepers of the realm, but that doesn't really mean anything. And now we have Vex standing up and saying, no, they're giving us a title, and we're going to live up to those titles.
And I think that's important too, that this is coming from Vex or Vax. And just because of the history that Vex and Vax have of running away from situations when they get tough, she's clearly making a stand and say, yeah, that is our home, and we are going to do something about these titles, which really shows growth, I think, for these characters in general.
Most definitely. And it shows more of a cohesion. I find even in these quiet moments where they're together, they're not as in season one, and even towards the end of season one, they were a group of people that were together. And in this season, they seem really to be Vox Machina. They seem to be connected. They seem to be still have their differences, still have their little things that they trigger each other with. But just sitting around a campfire, they actually feel like a coalesced group this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that this quiet little scene really cements that for season 2.
Yeah. And this is, again, and from a storytelling perspective, really intelligent writing, because we have the cold open, which is the hook. It grabs the viewer, drags them in by the throat, shows exactly how bad things are, gets you riled up right off the bat, and then there's immediate pause. Immediate emotional moment, recollection, tie things back together, and then Vax comes diving in and says, I'm back from my scouting. Good news, bad news. I found the lake. And they all want to run off until finally Percy's like, okay, what's the bad news? Like, come on, guys.
Right, yeah.
Bad news is...
what is going on?
There's no tomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the obvious thought process that goes through everyone is it's hidden by magic, it's destroyed, it just wasn't there, this was all a hoax. And everyone's favorite scamp, Scanlan, decides that he's going to cross the lake, which is frozen over, and check out the other side and scout out if the tomb's on the other side. And he uses possibly my favorite trick that he's done so far. His Scanlan's hand is now Scanlan's foot, and he ice skates across the ice on Scanlan's foot. And my personal favorite quote from Scanlan this season so far, well, now I have a foot fetish.
Yeah, there's quite a few awesome lines in this one. But yeah, so they're Vax reminds everyone that this is a vestige of divergence, and they have to be careful. It's not going to be wrapped in a gift wrap. You can't just run out. So, and that's where Scanlan's like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to have fun. And this is where I was really torn, because I was going to either design this drink, which I must say actually just looks like cola in your glass when you stir it.
It does.
This one, or I was going to come up with some kind of fishy themed drink, and I thought maybe drinking rotten fish is not a good idea. But Scanlan is attacked. So again, we go from this really soft, poignant moment to Auntie is being jumped up again, where all of a sudden there's cracks in the ice and a hand reaches up and grabs Scanlan and starts dragging him beneath the ice.
Yeah, and suddenly the ice is all of a sudden very thin and isn't able to hold anyone's weight, as Grog makes a very valiant attempt to dash out onto the ice to save Scanlan, and it immediately falls through. And everyone else begins the process of fishing Scanlan, pulling up Grog, and being berated by what we learn are fish people.
Yes, the Adoro, and actually even Percy. That was the thing that really caught me too, is that Grog ran out and Percy ran out automatically, which kind of struck me as, not to say that Percy doesn't care about the rest of the group and he's not the type to charge in, but to just have this talk of like, this is dangerous, we don't know what's going on. They saw Scanlan go through. It seemed very brash for Percy to start running out onto the ice automatically.
Agreed. I think Percy, just his nature leads him to be kind of towards the back of the group. It's not to say he doesn't worry about anyone or want to protect them, but the way he protects them is by being out of the way and using his pepper box. So the fact that he was one of the first ones to want to dash out, again, I think speaks volume for where he is as a character, as you can continue to see his growth.
Yeah.
Even without being the main character.
Exactly. He's not a main character in this one, but that's the thing, is we see his foot break through the ice. He jumps back and he looks at Keyleth and he's like, can you turn into a bird or something? And this is where, in this episode, we do see some of Keyleth's inabilities or struggling abilities for what she's doing. And she said, I can't. Just how is that going to help? And then all of a sudden, there's this glowing spear comes flying through the air, rips the hand off of the Adoro, and saves Scanlan. And then Scanlan's wrapped up in this beautiful red bubble and floated back to the ground. And that is the introduction of two more friends that have come back. Well, not quite friends.
Frenemies. Yeah, Cash and Zara have come out, having been sent off to help the group by the Sphinx. They, make their reintroductions and explain the situation. One thing I did want to kind of counterpoint you, Travis, is that I didn't feel like that was a moment where Keyleth's anxiety was coming back out.
No, I wouldn't say anxiety. I think just the fact that her abilities aren't fully grown. She still has a lot of growth to go.
Okay, yeah, that I can agree. I felt like it was just a matter of I don't know what to do. This isn't my world right here. So yeah, okay.
But we do get that a couple of times this episode where we see that, and throughout the season, we see Keyleth has gone through some massive growth and is a lot more powerful in a variety of different ways. And they're really keeping that healed back by clearly stating, no, I can't do that, or I'm not good at this yet, which comes up with the water in a little bit. So showing that she still does have a lot of growth before her, as strong as she is getting. But you're right, there was no anxiety in this one at all. It was almost kind of a snap back, like, we didn't turn into a bird. How am I supposed to turn into a bird?
Right. Birds don't swim, dummy.
Yeah. But we do have, again, I just put down, once they say that Osisa sent them, Zara and Cash, then we have this moment and multiple moments of what I just put down as Kiki crushing.
Yes.
Because there really is a lot of, and that does factor in, but there really is a lot of Keyleth really getting kind of dumbstruck in Cash's presence.
Yeah, if you remember the last episode, their introduction to each other was pretty flirty. And there's obviously some kind of attraction there between both of them. They both seem to kind of throw the glances and the side conversations about each other around. So it's not surprising that Keyleth is getting all doe-eyed, I think, in Cash's presence.
Yeah, and we get to see more of Cash's personality, because even when they walk in, there's a little bit of a swagger to him. A lot of swagger to him. But he says, I bet you're all happy to see me. And he says, well, I know Antlers is. And that just kind of caught me. I was like, calling her Antlers, and the fact that she didn't, even bristle a little bit, she just, melted.
Yeah. Hey, it happens. Do you know who the voice actor is for Cash?
Yes, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I did see who it was.
It's Will Friedle, who is he was the best friend in Boy Meets World. He was the older brother's best friend.
Yes. Yeah, so. I remember seeing that. I've gone through and I've seen, because I pause frequently. It takes me about an hour to take my notes. And I try to check to see the names of the characters and who's doing what. And this has just been an all-star cast for voice actors this season. It's been impressive. And I was trying to explain that to my wife and a friend of mine. And my wife was like, I don't know who these voice actors are. And then I paused at one point. She's like, oh, that person? Really? It's impressive.
Yeah, and they're all so talented too. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's just wild how good they are at this. And I actually started following Critical Role on TikTok, and they've got some really funny behind the scenes stuff. Like all of them showing how they roll their dice, their different techniques. But for this, the Adoro have grabbed Scanlan. He's been saved, and they're looking for the Tomb of the Matron of Ravens. This contains the most powerful being that was her most powerful defender, Pervon. Whereas Scanlan said, what, last name Pedo Bear?
Yeah, they have a lot of fun at his expense. They throw some bars around. It's pretty funny. It's right up the track of kind of the humor of what Vox Machina has been this whole time. And it's a nice change of pace considering Like we've already had like the touching moment, we've already had combat, like we're getting everything.
Really quickly, and that goes to show the whole idea of writing where you have increased tension, drop it off, increased tension, drop it off, and it's not doesn't always have to be the exact same way of dropping off tension. You can do the touching moment, you can do the moment of hilarity and frustration for Cash, where he's like, you people are just stupid and terrible. But then Vex and Zara start talking about Zara's amulet, and Vex says, "Where did you get this amulet from?" "I had to kill a demon for it." And that's where Vex really tries this. "Oh, well, we've recently got a whole pile of magical equipment as well." And Scanlan's like, "Oh, you mean the shit we grabbed from Gilmore's?"
Yeah, and,
totally not reading.
She bristles at that. Yeah, she totally bristles at that. This is a moment, so she takes a moment to dump all of these magic items that they got at Gilmore's, and lo and behold, you're right. That satchel comes out of the bag of holding. I have no idea what that satchel is.
Yeah.
And apparently, so far on Reddit, no one does.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, that's something that really... It almost looked like it was holding a book. Yeah. Just the shape of it, the form, I don't know. But there is that satchel list there. And then there's the broom where Zara is like, oh, fantastic. A broom, you have great taste. So this is something that I actually took note of because I have a note coming up where I just say there's a lot of piss in this episode. And it's because we do have, again, I highlight this because it's not often in shows that you do get to see characters actually going to the bathroom. But coming up a little bit later on, we'll discuss it, but we see Grog and Scanlan peeing in the snow, making happy faces. But then we have this episode-long pissing contest between Vex and Zara.
Yep.
And that was the whole thing. I was like, there's just a whole lot of piss in this episode. Like, it's just like, it's all over the place. They really go into it. But it's really fascinating how they have this battle of wits and battles of wills just constantly between Vex and Zara.
Yeah, no, I agree. It doesn't stop, honestly. It's just this constant trying to one up each other, starting as soon as they sit down at this campfire with the magical items, and continues as we go forward. We'll be able to get more into that, but I agree. The piss is flowing in this episode.
It is. And Grog gets to put on his belt, where again Cash has got this like, oh great, a clunky belt, fantastic for you.
That's a chunky belt.
A chunky belt.
That's a chunky belt.
I love Grog's reaction because that would totally be my reaction as well.
the reaction to when he puts it on.
Yeah. I got a beard.
So the belt in game is called the Belt of Dwarven Kind, and when you wear the belt, you get a dwarf's beard.
Nice. Is that the only thing it does? Is grant you a beard?
I think it like slightly boosts your constitution or something like that as well. But the visual thing that shows that you were wearing it is this beautiful beard that you get.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I love that, where Cash is like, that's it, you get a beard, and Grog leads in, I got a beard. Awesome. As a fellow beard wearer for over 10 years.
And the great part is that comes back again later in the episode as well.
It does. It most certainly does. But they're going through all of this different stuff they have, and then they go in to say that the Slayers take... And again, there's a lot of subtle writing in this. So they say, Cash and Zara say that, the Slayers thought the tomb was gone, and now apparently it's not gone. It is still there. And then that's where Vex takes a moment and says, well, it must have really pissed you off that Osea told us about it. And then there's this beautiful moment of pause with Zara where she's like, hadn't crossed my mind.
Yeah, it's the timing and kind of eye twitch animation in that scene, in that moment, was so beautiful. I can't even the timing was superb. I can't even.
Yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous. But then we do have this moment where I kind of struck. So it's funny because they say that the Sphinx sent them to go through. And then Vex and Vax have this moment where Vex is like, they followed us. Or Vax is like, they followed us. That I don't think that they were sent. I think they followed us, and we can't really trust them on this. Obviously, you can't trust them because they know Vex and Vax are going to know. The twins are going to know more than anyone else.
Right.
But then we have this first of many moments where Vex says, "Don't go far from me, sister," or Vax says, "Don't go far from me, sister," and Vex says, "I'll be fine. Stop. Leave it alone. I'm fine. You've always been saying that to me my entire life. I'll be fine." Then we have the first flashback of this episode to when they were kids.
Yes. So I think they hit this really hard in this episode. The Vax saying, "Don't step far from me." He has been saying this throughout this season, especially, but throughout both seasons. But he did multiple times in this one, and it was punctuated by these flashbacks that they have. I think 3 times during the episode. And this first flashback is pretty brutal because you see the twins as children with their father. I couldn't tell you what the name of the Elvish city is because it's Elvish and I can't pronounce anything. But you see that Vax is doing his rogue-like things and picking open this jewelry box, and Vex pulls out this beautiful tiara and puts it on. She looks gorgeous, like royalty. And then Dad comes in, kind of startles them. It falls, and for being as pretty as this tiara is, thing shatters into about 6 million pieces.
It's freaking useless. Like, you breathe
Right?
on it and it falls apart. Like, isn't Elvish stuff supposed to be super strong? Like
Supposed to be super
and very
strong.
But
yeah, I mean, this thing, I don't know what was wrong with this.
Apparently the generations haven't been kind to this thing.
Right. And we learned that it's some kind of family heirloom, and everyone gets into a bit of a tiff. And we learned that this is the moment when the twins decided to leave the city.
And their father, for lack of other term, says that you are, refers to Vax as your diluted brother, and says that you don't belong here, you never did belong here, you weren't born into Elvish ways, you're diluted misfits, basically. And that's what really stuck a knife in my heart for this, where if you paid attention leading up to this episode, because we don't know a lot about the twins, but we find out that, I think Vex was saying that they were born from their mother, and they were raised with their mother, and then their father found them, took them from the mother, and brought them into the Elvish society. And then we learned that this is how they're being treated the entire time they're there.
Yeah, so we learned, I want to say in one of the first episodes of season 1, that Vax and Vex were half Elvish. But that was really the only instance that we get this information this entire time leading up until this episode, when all of a sudden it becomes a real sticking point.
Yeah.
Obviously, the father, I'm not sure if it equates to all elves in this world, but the father, at least, super racist. Super racist.
And that was in my head. I was just like, all right, asshat, then why'd you go take them and bring them back to you? If you don't want them, you don't care for them, and you devalue them, why bring them back and force them to live with you? I think it's a power trip kind of thing that shows that he's, in my mind, an egomaniacal power tripping jerk that just wants to have control over everything.
Obviously. And I think that kind of leads to this scene as well. As much as this might have been a beautiful headpiece, heirloom, maybe, I think he really lorded over the fact that he could demean them because of it breaking. Yeah. I don't think that it had any kind of sentimental to this man.
Exactly. And then that's where Vex says, all right, sister, let's go. And Vax doesn't want to go. She wants to stay. And she wants to be here. And this scene in itself really took away all my fears of this brother-sister storyline being anything similar to the... So I still think it is kind of parallel story structure, which makes sense because in writing, that's what you do. Yep. For book 1 to book 2, you have parallel storylines to help ease the reader through what's happening and carry them along and keep them connected in going through. But this is a vastly different story structure than we saw with Percy and Cassandra.
Absolutely. And it really shows that difference when you see the bond that these two have going forward in the other flashbacks.
Yeah. And then it cuts from this really poignant, sentimental, sad scene to Grog and Scanlan peeing smiley faces in the snow.
Yep, and talking about how they're peeing smiley faces in the snow.
And that's the thing, like, and that's where I laughed about this, was because it was not just them like peeing smiley faces. Then they had a different camera angle of it. Then they had a different camera angle of it. And then they had the camera pan back to the rest of the group, and Grog and Scanlan were still in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah. And remember, this is a 25-minute episode. 4 camera angles of peeing smiley faces in the snow.
But they're looking at the map, and they say, Cash's map of the thing, and they say, well, look, there's the tomb, but it looks like it's upside down. And that's where we have Zara doing some divination to find out where the tomb actually is. And surprise of all surprises, it's under the ice.
It is under the ice. And I'm not 100% sure if what she used lines up with D&D magic. I was guessing maybe she was using some kind of like detect magic, detect location. I'm not sure, but the effect that they put in for this looks really cool. Zara's magic is really cool looking.
Yeah, I'm digging the red color of it too. But I like the fact that it's not red. It's red with heavy black streaks, which is obviously symbolic. Or symbol.
I mean,
symbolic.
Like I said when we were introduced to her, man, she gives some evil vibes, and her magic also gives off some evil vibes.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about her. But she's such an awesome character.
She is.
I
also like evil though. So.
But again, I like evil characters. Yep. That's the same. Just like LJ, I'm Bowser is my favorite character from Mario. I always go for the evil or the partially evil anti-hero type. But then this is again where we have a moment where the Zara is like, Keyleth, help me open this. And this is where Keyleth actually says, I'm not good with water. And as we know, that she has to do her Aramente, and she has to go through the 4 different elements of things going along. That becomes more prevalent later on in the season. But if you know what she is and what she's doing, you know that she has to do this stuff. So water has not been one of her strong points at this point. And then that's where she's told, well, just use wind. And boy, does she ever. This is a really beautiful scene, actually. I really like how they did this.
Yeah, they do such a good job. And just like Moses, they're able to part the sea, and then Zara uses question mark barrier magic to hold the water that has been moved by Keyleth's air at bay as everyone rushes over to the temple and, of course, gets stuck because of a door.
This is one of the ones that actually made me burst out laughing because it's just such a simple thing where Scanlan's like, and it's also intelligent, but Scanlan's like, this one's a pull, big guy. And they pull. And again, it's one of those things where I find the writing is so, I mean, for most people, they're going to look at this and be like, yeah, it's whatever. You're being stupid, being obsessed with this point. But for me, from a writing perspective, the fact that they use the logic of this tomb is underwater, it's got the force of water pushing against it constantly. If the doors opened in, the whole thing would be flooded in a heartbeat. The doors pull out. It's a common sense thing. It's keeping the pressure, like it just equated the whole thing. Is just shows the attention to detail that they actually use.
It's pretty crazy. And to be able to tie that into Vox Machina's just ineptitude with doors makes it even more funny. Even if this wasn't an actual issue with the doors and it was just, it's a pull, not a push. They got the value out of the joke just by seeding all the other jokes throughout the season. So it was cool.
They did. It also added a level of tension to it because they are in this moment of stress and you see Grog, you're like, oh no, they can't, how they hold the water back? They can't get in. And then Scanlan's like, yeah, no, dude, let's go. But then the other thing that I always really coach people in writing is that on every page, you have to include some kind of sense. You have to include something because senses are, especially the sense of smell, is the one sense that's the strongest connection to our memories. And anytime you can tie a scene or a page with a sense to it, then when I said sense, I meant sense of smell being tied to our memory, sense of smell. You realize I used the word sense in multiple ways in that one sentence. But it really ties the reader or the viewer into that scene. And they do have this moment where they step in And the one of them states, "This place." Well, I think it's Vex says this place smells like fish and death. And they obviously have the visual component, they have the audio component, they have all this like really beautiful work that they do with this, but now they're adding another sensory component into it of actually telling you, like, you see what this place looks like. It's water, it's dripping, it's moist, but you now know too it smells like fish and death.
Yeah, I thought it was beautifully done, and like the timing is perfect. You know, they get into this new place, you have this new world to look at, and now you immediately have this like thought of stink in your nostrils while you're watching the scene. Yeah, I think it was beautifully done, beautifully woven in, and seamless. If you weren't looking for this kind of feedback, then you wouldn't even notice that you're smelling now as well.
Yeah, and it's really triggering things in your past of, the time you went fishing, the time you maybe came
Mhm.
across a dead mouse on the road or something.
Right.
And that actually reminds me of, I went on a distillery tour and got to sample straight out of the still that was coming through. And one of the samples that we did from the going through was described as having the scent of wet cheese.
What?
I was like, I have never heard that before, but I'm using it again. It smells, it wasn't a good smell. It smells like wet cheese.
Did Oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna.
That was the astringent part of the still, the first part that pours off that you cannot drink. So that's
Gotcha.
why it
That makes
smells
more
like that.
sense.
Yeah. But anyway, so they're in there, and then we have this again, this moment of Cash and Zara having this scheming moment where
Mhm.
they're like, well, we're letting them get ahead of us. Like, are we, or are we letting them take the traps, like, for what's going to come? They're going to take the fall for what's going to come. And this is where I really started cluing in that, you know what, maybe Cash isn't such a jerk as Zara is. There seems to be this hesitation about Cash, where he's not this full rush in and destroy everybody. He's kind of stepping a little bit more lightly.
Yeah, and I think that fits well. If you hadn't picked up on it, Cash is a paladin. So I think that fits well in what kind of person he would be in order to be a paladin. You don't usually have wishy-washy paladins. Usually they are on the good side or on the bad side of things. And Cash, I would say, is definitely on the good side of things and kind of being dragged backwards.
Yeah, but he still has that edge. He still, he was
Mm-hmm.
the one that threw the spear past Vex's head when they were at the Slayer's Take, and he is a member of the Slayer's Take, so there is still this dark edge to him. But he's not that bad of a guy. And I think that's one of the reasons why Keyleth is kind of drawn to him as well.
He's like the good guy with the bad streak. He's a
Exactly.
bad boy, a bad good boy.
Good guy that wears a leather jacket.
Yeah.
But then, as they're going in, of course, there's this underwater temple. It's gonna be full of traps, and
Right.
the lovable Derpy Grog looks down, sees a stone sticking out of the ground, and goes, "Oh, don't want to trip on this," and steps on it, and almost cuts Vax in half.
Yeah, traps. Gotta watch out for those traps. Don't let the barbarian lead.
But there's a swinging blades, and he's like, "Oh, found a trap." And then, as they're going along, they slide down the slope, and this is a poignant moment that I noticed, where they're sliding down the slope. Keela slides out of control, and Cash catches her, and they have this moment where they kind of make doe eyes at each other and are kind of like giggling in this one moment together a little bit. And then Vex has a very solid reaction to this. If you then the camera pans back up, Vex looks very hurt and very put out by this. Now remember, he's in the last season. He made a move towards Keyleth, and she said, "No, I'm not down for anything." So he's already kind of laid his heart bare, and now he's being forced to watch her be flirtatious with another person.
Yeah, and I think I think it's tough. I think it's really tough because there have been multiple times where he is openly flirtatious with Gilmore, like openly flirtatious with Gilmore, and no one says anything. But Keyleth, has a moment where she's a little doe-eyed, and he's immediately put out.
Yeah,
she wasn't that into you, man.
Well, that's it. And I'm just kind of wondering if, because they do tie psychology into these episodes so much, whether or not this is being tied back to the rejection because he's a half elf constantly throughout his entire life. If this is another thing of like, if only I was, maybe. Right. And maybe not. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But there is this kind of moment where it's like, yeah, he does. You're right. He has. It's kind of a two sides of a coin where it's okay for him to go and be flirtatious with Gilmore, but I don't know if he thinks that's actually going to go anywhere, if he's just doing it for fun, or if he thinks that this is more serious. But either way, there definitely is a double standard here where it's okay for him to flirt and he gets put out if he sees her flirting.
Right, exactly. And as far as your tying that connection to the fact that he's a half elf and having trouble in this episode, I agree. I think that's one of the reasons why it's there, just to give more credence to that feeling that he's feeling throughout the episode, that, you know, they're all feeling throughout the episode. But ultimately, I still think I don't think it's fair. Yeah, and one of the things that kind of dulls that for me is the fact that Keyleth is a half elf too. So if it was someone else, I feel like it would have affected him more because of his being a half elf. But this is another half elf, like, preferring some dude. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. We still have a lot of season left.
we do. And immediately, again, they're really quick, but not too abrupt. They're really quick with the moments of emotion, moments of connection, and then back and forth. So immediately after this, Cameron doesn't even cut away. We just see Grog slip, put his hand down on another brick, and then spikes come flying through the walls. Door comes slamming down, and Grog says, "Oh, that might have been me."
Yeah, maybe it was you, man. I don't know. Yeah, I don't understand why someone doesn't have Grog on a leash during this episode.
That comes up though. I loved it later on with Pike. For fuck's sakes, man. But this door comes down and then separates them. There really is this theme of separating the twins this season, because in the very first episode they're walled off with ice, and Vex says, you know, take care of yourself, I'll be back. And now in this, they're separated. It's on one side of the wall, it's Vex, Grog, Pike, Zara, and Trinket. And then Vax and the rest are on the other side, and Vax says, don't, like, stay safe, I'll be back.
Yeah.
And he goes back. So there really is this separating of the twins through this entire season. There's a really big drive of splitting these twins apart.
I think this separation was the one that bothered me the most out of all of them so far in both seasons. Not because of them actually getting separated, which, you know, that happens. Trap happens. Grogs happen. But just Vax's... I was just getting really irritated in this episode with Vax's attitude and, like, really overprotecting nature towards Vex throughout it. And this one, for some reason, just really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know that I'm able to explain why. I think it was just because of it happening again and again and again.
I think so. And I think
was the point, I think.
Yeah, but I think that was the thing of it, is that it really gave you the impression, like, they did a great job of putting you in Vex's shoes. Where it's like, enough. I get it. You care for me? Piss off. That's enough. Like, I can stand on my own 2 feet. And then we do have this flashback.
Yep.
Where Vex says, I want to go back. Let's just go back home. And he says, no, like, we don't need to go home. Like, Father did this to us. And, you know, he doesn't care. We're just going to keep going off. And she's like, we don't look at it. We don't have anything. We have nothing. And he says, you have me. And her response is, I don't need you. And leaves.
Yeah. And I think this made me feel better. This made me feel vindicated. This is what I needed. I needed them to get separated and for Vax kind of to be put in his place. I understand. Like it just felt like so much, and then to have this flashback and have Vex be like, "Leave me alone." Like I'm so sick of this. Leave me alone. I was like, "Yeah, girl, I get it. Tell him." Jeez, yes.
Yeah. Well, and that was it. Like they really did a good job of prepping you for that moment,
Yeah,
of
exactly.
having that like, oh, that was a really kind of shitheel thing to say to him.
It was brutal. It
But
was real
yeah,
brutal.
that's like, dude, pack it in. That's enough.
This was
Um,
also another time where they really punctuated the fact that the twins are different and not welcome in the Elvish society. Vax specifically says what we are. Like they don't accept us for what we are.
yeah,
And I just felt like that was a really sobering moment to hear that that is indeed how they feel. They feel like they are not accepted into any society because of what they are.
exactly. And that's a big thing that I find I've seen through a lot of different fantasy novels and stuff, the half elves, and honestly, it seems really in the elvish society that, and human society, but you see halflings of different types throughout fantasy, but it really seems to be the half elves that have the short end of the stick
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, agree.
And then we have again with another relationship. Pike lights up the stairs. They're going down, and the water
Yeah.
is like up to her eyeballs. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, she's lifted up and she's on Grog's shoulders. And we have this beautiful, quick, funny moment of Pike and Grog, and showing again just how close they are.
Yeah, I literally wrote down, I think Grog and Pike are my favorite duo.
Yeah,
It's like the noises and like contentment she had when Grog picked her up, and she was just like, yeah, okay, that's great, yeah,
it's just absolutely fantastic.
perfect.
But I had a thing when I saw this where I was like, okay, they're really like they haven't hit upon the super buddy Pike Grog thing yet this season. They had like her calling him buddy and a little bit of closeness, but this was like a really close kind of beautiful moment.
Yeah,
And in the back of my head, I was like, that's gonna get destroyed somewhere down the road. There's like this is one of those very subtle threads that they're starting to stitch stuff together with, and I don't think I'm gonna like where this is going because they do have a lot of division happening in this episode and kind of in this season, and the show and are focusing more on Grog and Pike a little bit more. And for this, I don't know, this scene just kind of was so beautiful it stood out to me.
yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where, especially in this episode, especially in the season, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, whenever things get too good together, that's when they get ripped apart. So I definitely feel exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily what it's going to be, but there's going to be something down the road.
I do.
Well, actually, I have watched up to episode 9, so I do know roughly what's going to be happening. But from going back to when I first watched this, I just had this thing of like, okay, there's something that's coming, and I always try to deal with each of these things as
Yep.
the unknown in the future. But
Yep.
I got to say, I almost sent you a couple of messages when I watched the newest
Oh, you
episode
should've.
drop. I was just like, dude, this the one episode. You know the episode, I think. I was just
Yep,
like,
yeah.
I was in heaven. I was texting my wife. I'm like, this freaking episode, man. But anyways, that's gonna come, and I'm gonna be very excited for it. But then they go down this beautiful pathway, and I like the fact that they actually have a reaction from the sunken tomb itself as they're going through. It's not just all the lights are lit up and everything, and the lights aren't lights; they're like these glowing diamonds or crystals.
Yeah.
And as they
Magic.
walk down this path, they start like boom, 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 kind of lighting up for them, but not all the way. That's only
It's
about
such a
half
cool
of them
effect.
lights up.
It's such a cool effect.
Yeah, and then they get attacked by the Adoro again on the path, and what an attack this one was! Holy crap!
Yeah, it was very interesting. So you had these things jumping out of like the sunken pools, trying to drag people in. The first one, I believe, like bear hugs Pike and just starts dragging her as far and as deep as it can. And you see her struggling against it, trying to pop off her like holy magics to escape. It was pretty intense. But then you've got other ones like throwing tridents and fighting with Grog and with Vex, and
And
it was
Trinket.
and Trinket,
Trink.
who,
Yeah.
man, Fish People MVP. This Trinket, I've never seen him so effective against something in my life.
Oh yeah. I don't think we've even seen Trinket fight this much as we have. We've seen like the
Right,
threat, but this is like Trinket, like just with bloodlust going in there.
it was crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of bloodlust,
Well, that was it because we have so Grog pulls Pike out, and then that's where what you were alluding to with the beard, where the beard gets hacked off half his face, and he's like, "Not the beard." And I love the fact that he actually is just like slow in how he says this stuff, just like, "Not the beard," and he starts raging, and his rage takes on a little bit of a different tone, shall we say?
yeah, so he sticks the sword in the first Adora, and as we know, his sword likes to drink up the blood of his enemies. And much like when he got a little bit of blood from, I think it was the Stormbreaker, uh,
Yeah,
he kind of starts to get this like blood rage. Like he gets the steroid muscles and the steroid eyes. And we just see Grog start to disembowel the Adora. I mean, like stabbing their corpses until they're a bloody pulp.
just going wild. I put down bloodshot and bloodlust.
Yeah.
Just his eyes were just crazed, and he was just in this blood fever rage going on. And then he gets blasted into the ceiling, and the mage comes out. And that's why I had to say, the Adora, the mage, they're such cool designs.
So cool.
Yeah, and they actually harkened me back to the Gargoyles TV show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see
A
that.
lot of the jaw structure of these creatures and just the way their teeth lined up was very akin to the Gargoyles cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah. The mage especially I found to be just a really cool designed character. And very threatening. You could hear it in their voices when they're like, "Oh no, they've got a mage." It was like, "Oh, this is a bad situation they're in."
Yeah, but I love Zara's comment. She's like, "Well, the last one's always the hardest."
Yeah.
But it was a really that fight was a really cool fight where we have Vex and Zara still getting into their pissing match with each other and one upping each other. Who's going to save who? And they go in, and then this mage is really powerful and really ridiculously strong and hard to kill. And then we have finally the other group shows up, and Scanlan comes in with Scanlan's hand with almost everybody on board. Cash falls off
Yep.
and goes flying in.
They're really upset.
Yeah. Oh no, he fell off. But then this is where again we have Keyleth. We actually get to see her working with water, and she's trying to stop this blast of water coming from the mage, and ultimately she can't stop it. She basically says like, "Damn water, like I can't get this together." So again, we see that as far as she's grown, there's still a lot of growth for this character.
Right, exactly. And I think it's cool to see because we're not seeing the anxiety hold up. Now we're seeing her actually struggle with a skill that she wants to learn. So I think this was honestly an improvement for her.
Yeah, it shows that she's on the path to getting
Yep.
where she needs to be, and she's not just stuttering trying to figure out how to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is good. And then we have the mage killed by a beautiful arrow through the back of the head from Vex. He completely turned his back on, and then Vex turned her back on Zara as well. But before that, we finally have an addressing of what's happening. His Grog is buried under a bunch of rock, and Pike says, "Buddy, you're okay." And he's like, "Well, a ceiling fell on me." And then she goes a little bit more into.
Yeah. Yeah. She starts asking, like, basically commenting on what we've been seeing. You've been looked a little crazy with the stabbing. And yeah, it was good to see someone kind of pointing out the elephant in the room. Like,
yeah. Which, again, they tried with Percy in the past. And that's kind of this, again, a similar parallel where some people are picking up that there's something not right going on. But before she can really ask him and even give him a chance to deny or anything else, they get called away, being like, "Okay, let's go." Zara and Cash have disappeared.
Ah, man, those tricky kids always disappearing on the group. We're to the point now where we're deep inside of the temple and we need to find the death shroud. That is the goal. That's the reason we're all here. And the group isn't super concerned with the fact that Zara and Cash have disappeared. They think that, they just got separated. But really, Zara and Cash are trying to beat them to it.
Yeah. And this is the opportunity where we see, well, for one, when the group got back together, there wasn't like, the thing that struck me about that was, I know they're under stress and under pressure and they really need to move on. There wasn't like a reunion moment of, hey, we're all back together. I think Vex and Vax had something really quick, or Vax said something and it was kind of brushed off, but then it was kind of like they just went through this insane moment together and they just kept pushing on and moving forward. Because Pike was having this moment with Grog, and I think it was Percy or Vax, Vax that was saying, come on, we need to press on. Like, whatever you're doing, don't do it. Let's go. But then we get to see Cash has the ability to divine where magical things are as well, in a bright golden color.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense that he's able to do that. He finds, I guess the best way to describe it is like a secret room compartment. I don't know. And they kind of head into what they think is the hidden tomb of what's his name? Purvon.
Come on, it's not that hard.
Sorry. I'm sure it was. No. Sorry.
I love this name. We haven't played on this name nearly enough. But Cash doesn't seem... This is where Cash was really like, I don't think we should be going in here. Like, this is the first time we actually see him kind of openly balk at the idea of moving forward and leaving everyone else behind.
Yeah, he actually comes out and very vocally shows that he has a conscience and openly tries to defy Zara, who just doesn't listen to him.
Yeah. But then they go in and we see one of the, as the tomb thing closes behind and glows gold, then we see, if you catch really quickly, one of the dead Adora on the ground, there's a subtle brief glow underneath his head. Mm-hmm. And then again, we have this moment of tension, not action, but this moment of tension. So a medium-paced moment. The group coming through, and Grog says, "This looks like a fish orgy." And Scanlan says, "Yeah, I did that. It's not bad."
Excuse me. Wow. Yeah, another really fun moment. A very Scanlan thing to say.
Yeah. Again, the characterization they've done for these people are just fantastic. But then they're about to move in, and again we have this is where I put down the note of ridiculous overprotection, because they're about to move in, and yes, I know that Vax is kind of a scout, but they're all about to move in, and Vax puts his hand on Vex's shoulder and says, "Wait, let me check first," and pushes past.
Yeah, and I understand that Vax is quote unquote scout, but honestly, so is Vex. They both have these abilities, so this just leads to more of that overprotective nature of Vax, in my opinion, and just seemed so obnoxious to me. But we did see
the note I put down as well was like overprotective.
Yeah, but we did just see the flashback where they separated, so I was still kind of feeling that flashback, so it didn't bother me as much as it had in the past.
Yeah, but it was definitely, this is hitting critical point. But then,
right.
And then this is the point where absolutely, again, I burst out laughing in so many spots in this episode. This is one of them where Grog looks and sees this intricately carved thing on the wall, and he goes to reach up for it, and Pike slaps his hand and says, "For fuck's sakes, man!
Stop touching everything." Yeah. It's just such good timing and so appropriate, because that was what I was thinking the entire episode was, God, someone tie him up. Do something. Stop letting him lead.
Stop touching shit. And then Keyleth sees the hole in the ground and kind of says, "What's this?" And then Vex says, "I'm going to go check this out. Do not touch anything." And then he calls over Pickle to light the hole. And he goes down to investigate.
Another nickname. Vax especially seems
Vax.
to like to nickname everyone.
Yeah.
So Pickle is probably my favorite one because what is it? Because she's the size of a pickle?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pickle, but yeah, it was. I really like.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
But he goes down and investigates, and it's pretty well pit clean and empty. But there's kind of this altar-like thing and a painting. This is the first time we're introduced to the image of the second Sphinx.
Yeah, everyone's really impressed too. It's a weird depiction. It's a really weird depiction.
It is. I kind of want to go back and take a look at this closer.
Yeah.
But then that's when Trinket comes back, and I love the fact that Trinket is actually so used in this season.
Yeah, he's like a real character right now.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But Trinket comes and he starts sniffing the body of the Adoro that had the brief flash under its head, and that triggers Percy to go investigate further.
Yeah, and when he investigates, he finds that there is basically like a switch. We'll just call it a switch in the floor that can be pushed using one of the bricks, and it opens up or makes the tomb of Pervon rise.
So all they had to do was turn on the switch to rise Pervon.
Yep, he's very easy to turn on.
Just flip a switch. But the tomb rises, and then Percy says, "Look at this. Like, should we take a look? Should we go in and open this?" And this is an interesting tie-in I found to show that Percy was being very astute through this episode and through what's been happening, because he completely plays Vex, because he says we should take a look at this, and then Vex says, "Well, we probably shouldn't. We should probably wait." And then he says, "Yeah, you're right. Your brother certainly wouldn't approve." And then she says,
Yep.
"Okay, let's take a look."
Yeah, it's honestly perfect. I have mixed feelings about this. I think that it plays well. I think it's written well. Like everything about it, I think is good. The only thing that bothers me is just Percy doing it. It just feels a little out of character for him to be so sneaky
And reckless.
and
It's
reckless.
not normally
Yeah.
Percy's type to say, "We found this tomb, we've seen all the dangers we've gone through, and so yeah, let's just say screw everybody else in the group and dive in here."
But at the same time, we have been seeing him be reckless this episode. So it does fit. It just feels weird.
It almost struck me as him, because of that moment, like this made me flash back to the moment of them going through the tree with that look between him and Cassandra. Where it's kind of like, I don't have to carry this weight on me anymore. I don't have to be the Derulo anymore. So I can be a little bit more brash, a little bit more reckless, a little bit more. I don't have to worry about Whitestone. Whitestone is being protected. Now I can do what I want to do.
Right. And now he's flexing that newfound muscle.
In stupid ways.
In stupid ways.
Yeah. But I do like the fact that they stopped and they looked for traps first. Vex kind of investigated, made sure there's no traps. They pushed the lid off. And just, again, that moment of seeing the lid fall off the tomb was just, or the sarcophagus was this beautiful image inside. Almost looked like the Angel of Death.
Yeah, it really did. You can see the death shroud on the body, and it just looks creepy and cool.
Yeah, and it's just really beautiful scene. And then we have another flashback. They did a lot of flashbacks in this episode, and that's where, in this season, and that's where, at this point, I was like, okay, I love the idea of the flashbacks, but could some of this been done through dialogue, or did it have to be done via flashback? In the end, I kind of decided that it was done best by flashback, because the topic on the nature of what is being described in these flashbacks. But I just found that I hope moving forward that they don't rely so heavily on flashbacks. I'd like to see other forms of going in and exposition of the past and tying things back together without just constant.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. My only thought about the flashbacks was maybe we could have spread them out more during the other episodes, during the earlier episodes. We have seen some flashbacks of Vax and Vex in the first couple episodes, but none of them were as important as the ones that we saw in this one. And I think that maybe spreading them out a little bit more could have helped it not feel like it was so saturated this time.
Yeah.
But I can see the reason why, you know, they had a very clear theme in the story. So
yeah, it really tied. I mean, and that's the thing is, as much as there were, and that's why I don't think I would take away the flashbacks in this episode. I think they actually fit for what it is. I just hope it's not a pattern moving forward, because there are other ways of using previously done exposition. But we do have Vex hunting and eating a deer, and then she finds Vax crying.
Yeah, it's really touching. You can see that she like is concerned about her brother. Like, why is he over here crying? Like, it's raining. He's sitting next to like a stream, just bawling. And she gets really concerned, runs over, and it's like, what's the matter? Like, are you okay? And that's when we learn that Vex isn't overprotective of Vex because he feels like he needs to protect her. It's because he needs her and doesn't want to be alone.
Yeah. He's the one that's weak in the situation.
Right. Which I thought was a huge deal. Like, that completely changes what his character looks like and has looked like throughout this whole thing.
Yeah. It tied everything together beautifully. It made all the flashbacks completely make sense, tied everything solidly together, and kind of made me feel a little bit of a heel for being like, dude, just stop, and being like, oh, this is pure, as someone that deals with anxiety and depression, it's like, oh, this is just pure anxiety.
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
survive by yourself.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I was just like, wow, that was just so poetic, the way that they did that. And the scene is just kind of slipping in at the perfect time.
Yeah, because it flashes back and Percy reaches forward, touches the vestige, and there's this black ball appears, starts hovering, and just as the black ball is hovering, Vex shouts, "Stop, don't," and then she gets blasted backwards. And honestly, I want that scene as a screensaver or as a wallpaper for my computer. Just Vex being blasted back, the pure white, the black feathers of the crows going towards her. It was just a beautiful thing of her getting hit with this black wave.
It was a beautiful scene, if not just absolutely crushing, because this is one of the very, very few times in this whole series that Vax has agreed to separate from Vex and do something on his own, and then she gets blasted by what I can only assume is some kind of necrotic energy.
Yeah, and it moves in slow motion, and then really quickly Vex dies. The light goes out of her eyes. Trinket roars. Their group runs in and shouts, "Vax, get your ass up here!" And Vax says, I've been gone for 30 seconds. What the hell happened?" And his worst case scenario is laying on the floor in front of him.
And this is so the flashback is kind of zapping in and out pretty quickly during this scene, and this is almost exactly where Vax admits to Vex that it's been me all along. I know you can survive on your own, but I can't survive without you. And now you're watching him look into her eyes as the light fades from them, and it is soul crushing.
Yeah, and he says, "Do not go far from me." And that's also where Pike says, I can't help her.
Yeah.
And then this ends with him crying over Vex's body, and that's it. And that's what I found really impressive with this season is our main complaint, and I said, like we've said before, is They seem to have fixed some of the missteps from season 1. And in this season, they've really put a lot of moments together already where I'm not so sure how things are going to turn out. I actually have feared multiple times for the entire group or various members of the group in this season so far.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my problems in the first season. Was I felt like at one point, all of a sudden we had so much plot armor that I never felt that anyone was ever in danger again. And this episode, just in itself, kind of took that away. Like we don't know what's going on. They're in real peril. There's absolutely danger out there, and we just watched someone die.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really... So this is only episode 3, but the thing that really stuck out to me for this is one of the reasons why I actually feel that there's peril and there's risk beyond the fact that we just watched Vex die, is the fact that they've been on their back foot this entire season. Mm-hmm. They have not had any wins in this season. They were rescued from the dragons by Gilmore. Keyleth was able to use magic and stuff to get them out at the last minute, but they didn't win any battles there. And then even when they're facing off against, like, Grog got his ass kicked, and when they're facing off against the Slayer's Take, it was the Sphinx that saved them from the Slayer's Take. And then it was the Sphinx that spared them when they moved forward because they answered the right thing. And then Scanlan was rescued by Cash. And then they needed the Cash and Zara to help them find the tomb to get into where they're going. And yeah, they've won the battle against the Adoro underwater. But again, that was with the assistance of, like, the group being separated and coming through. So that was really kind of the only battle they've, you could say, won at this point. And then Vex dies.
I would say the closest that they came to having a win was finding this vestige. And then at the same time as finding the vestige, someone dies. It's been brutal for Vox Machina in season 2.
Yeah. They're really on their back foot moving through this whole thing. And I think that's the thing that really creates that level of peril, is they've never not been in peril.
No, I agree.
So now that we've gone through that, and we've discussed the episode with people in chat, so I think the drink kind of ties in perfectly with the sunken heart at the bottom of this sunken monument, the sunken tomb. Kind of tied everything together. So, yeah, I think that's one of all the drinks I've made so far for the show. I think that's my favorite, the one I'm most proud of, because it really, I think, emulates what happened in that episode.
I agree. I think that's so far, that's the pinnacle drink. That's the drink to beat.
There we go. So any final thoughts on the episode?
I'm going to make my bookend. Up to now, this is my favorite episode of both seasons.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. Like the fact that we get dragons, that we get... and again, like it's the tiebacks. It's not just the, forget... Like, you can allow you to forget the dragon and focus on this stuff. It's like, no, this is what they're fighting against. Like, You think this stuff that they're about to go through is really bad? This is what they're facing.
This is still happening.
Yeah, it was really, really solid for that. So what's your most critical moment from this episode?
Critical moment? What is my critical role? Who put me on the spot with that one? I was waiting for the MVP question. My critical moment, I think, was man, you're such a jerk. I'm gonna say it is Percy touching the vestige in his rash, newfound muscle of freedom, touching the vestige, ultimately killing Vex, and now having to face Vax in the next episodes with that knowledge.
Yeah, that's not going to go over so well. It's,
no,
as I like to say, it's going to go over like a lead balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would probably give my most critical moment to Percy as well, and just in the sense that
really
it was that manipulation that he did was really out of character. And that's
Yeah.
either this is either going to become stay as my critical moment from this episode, or it's going to become a wow, that was a genius moment in this episode, because this is either a shift and a change in Percy's character, that we're going to see kind of a more natural, brash, rash, dark side of him, or a manipulative side of him, or this is the beginning of really showcasing that he's already had this manipulative side, but he was really tied up with everything else in the past.
Right.
And now this is just showing that his true colors are starting to kind of come out. So this could be a stroke of genius, or it could be kind of a misstep in the characterizations of one of the characters.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing how that shakes out.
Yeah, and that one I honestly don't have an answer to right now on what I mean. I've seen up to episode 9, and I'd have to rewatch them, but I don't know. I didn't watch them with that in mind. That just kind of came to me now on what is my critical moment from this, because I think everything else was done really well. The writing was done well. The flow of the pacing was done beautifully.
Right.
Setting the scene for future events was great. But yeah. So to the question you were anticipating, who would you say
I was going to ask you.
Oh, okay, you can ask me. Go ahead.
Travis, who is your MVP of the episode?
That's what I don't know.
Good.
I really don't. I don't know what I would say for the MVP of the episode. It was a lot happening. No one particularly. Again, no one from the group particularly stood out as fantastic. Keyleth had struggles. Percy was acting weird. Even Pike was kind of struggling and certain things going through. So if I were to give an MVP for this episode, I would probably have to say Trinket.
It's good. Good choice.
This
Good
Trinket
choice.
kicked ass. We actually saw Trinket come into their own, become more of a main player of Vox Machina. And I think had Trinket not been involved, that whole battle against Theodora would have gone entirely differently than it did.
Yeah, I agree. So, as always, I'm going to give you who I think the actual MVP of the episode is and who my choice is. So, I think the actual MVPs of this episode are Vex and Vax. I think that their story pretty much drove it. We got a ton from them that we've kind of been begging for over a season. We got a lot from Vex. Like, it felt very good and very cathartic to hear their story. I think that's the true MVP of the episode. My MVP goes to Scanlan. Let me tell you why. The foot, the hands, and the orgy. It was just so good.
It was pretty fantastic. But I gotta say, that thing, I agree with Vex and Vax, though, being like kind of for the storytelling version of the MVP, definitely Vex and Vax. We did get what we were looking for, and yes, there was a lot of flashbacks, and it did seem kind of trying at certain points, but they closed or covered a lot of ground in one episode for this. There's really not that much more to say about their relationship moving forward. So it feels like they kind of wiped that. There is still more to say. I'm not saying there's nothing more. There's still more to say, but they brought us up to the point of really getting to the thing of like they really set up Vex dying, and I think that thing with Pike at the beginning was your foreshadowing that someone's going to die this episode, right, with Pike getting blasted. But I think too that from my storytelling methods, from my writing style, I always try to hurt, and if I'm doing a bad scene, I try to hurt the reader as much as humanly possible. I want them crying. I want them throwing the book across the room in a fit of rage and swearing to never read one of my books again or one of my stories again before they pick it up because they want to see how it ends.
Sounds like LJ.
Yeah, LJ and I get along really well for a reason. But, yeah, they really set up that killer punch for this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job for that.
And just in case anyone listening doesn't understand the format of this show, these first 3 episodes dropped at the same time a few weeks ago. So on Friday, you could watch episode 1, 2, and 3, and you were stuck. You're stuck on this episode now for a week. which is what I did. I watched it actually technically the day before it dropped because it dropped a little bit early.
Yeah.
And then had to stew on this for a week until the next episode's dropped.
Yeah, that was the thing with me. I watched one episode the day before, and then I watched the other two with a friend come by, and we watched all 3 episodes on the Friday. And yeah, so I saw episode 2 and 3 on Friday, and that was it. It was like, wow, this is really intense. And so, again, going back to the format question, that's what they're doing. Is every Friday they drop 3 episodes. So, right as of this, so we're on week 3. Because we do it the Monday following the Friday drop, and we're doing 1 episode a week for obvious reasons, because we just talk about it for so long.
We talk a lot.
Yeah, but the thing with that being is that we have so next Friday, and we just lost Billy, but he's going to come back. Next Friday, we have the final 3 episodes of the season are going to have dropped, and we will have seen how this all plays out. And I believe he is back. There we go. Welcome back.
All right.
So we will see. So next Friday, so this Friday coming up, we'll have the end of the season. We'll know how this entire season plays out, and then we continue for the next 9 weeks, just breaking down every episode as we go along. So you still can thrive on Vox Machina drawn out, but all the story has been told by Friday.
Yeah.
Yay. Which actually, on an interesting note, my wife and I found a new show on Netflix called The Physical 100.
Okay.
And it comes out every Tuesday. They do 2 episode drops a week. And it's a Korean show where they get 100 of the fittest people in Korea from all walks of life, but like all super fit, like strongest men, firefighters, all these different people that are doing stuff. And they go through a series of competitions for the ultimate person to survive. And in the end, they win equivalent of $358,000. It's like $1 million.
Wow.
$1 million and million won or whatever it is they have. And it's really impressive because the way they've laid out the episodes is it's kind of irritating because they do a lot of like flash or a lot of replays that don't need to be done, but they end it on these massive hooks. And so now this is a brand new show. It's on tomorrow. They dropped. It's the 3rd episode drop of 2 episodes. And it's the same thing where my wife and I are both just sitting on like the edge of our seats waiting to see what happens in this freaking thing. And it's a reality show, but they do such a good job of it. So if you like physical fitness and men and women and challenges and stuff, like the first challenge they had to do was in groups of 50, hang off of an apparatus in the air for as long as they could. And some of the guys actually got to, I think the top was 18 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a pretty intense show.
Huh.
But was that?
I'm just shocked and awe.
Well, they actually just, because it's kind of a grid pattern they're up there. So the guys that lasted longest would put their arms over top of the bar and hold on that way. So they weren't actually holding in a chin up position. They were actually locking their arms and holding. But then the blood flow gets cut off to your arms, and it's a pretty challenging thing. So I don't know if they'd be able to do an American version of it like they normally do, because I think the insurance companies wouldn't allow some of the stuff that goes on. So they'd have to.
Sounds like America.
Yeah. But at any rate, that just goes back to the idea of leaving appropriate hooks. And that's what we talked about in writing, is hooking the viewer or the reader, your audience, at the very beginning, making them a promise of what this episode is going to be about or what the story is going to be about, carrying them through appropriate plot pacing, and then hooking them on the end for just waiting to come back and see the next episode.
Oh, that's what you meant. You said hooking, and I was just...
You're still thinking of Pervon?
Oh, yeah.
I think Pervon's going to have moments moving forward for the rest of this.
I hope so.
That's it. So, any final wrap-up thoughts?
I don't think so. I think I said my piece.
I think so. I agree. This is probably the best episode they've done so far. And again, part of that is because I got to see Thordak, and it's just such an insanely well-designed dragon.
For real.
But this episode did make me want to go back and watch the first episode again, because our lines are still crossed with the dragons. There is a very distinct, different the one that breathes acid, with the kind of the webby acid ripping off of all of its everything. I thought there was two that were similar, and there's not. There's another one that's got similar to that one, but it's very smooth and doesn't have the same ragged, jagged kind of frills on it and everything. And so, I mean, probably could just Google and research who the four dragons are, but I want to go back and watch the first episode again and really dissect which dragon is which and what their abilities are. There we go.
Awesome.
So with that, thank you very much for joining me again, Billy. I appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed the After the Roll Season 2, Episode 3, The Sunken Tomb.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you. Have a fantastic night, Billy. And chat, our conversation is going to continue on after this. Billy, thank you very much. And thank you everyone who's watching this. If you haven't already, go back after this video for the video on demand or on our YouTube channel. Go back and check out Season 1, or go back and start Season 2 again at Episode 1 and come through. And as always, let us know what you think of the cocktails, and let us know if there's anything you would like to see or any changes you'd like to see to the format of what we're doing here. Have a great day, all. Take care of yourselves and each other.
Thank you.